Hello, my HS243/348 students who are in the Civil War Reconstruction course. This is your Professor Donald Earl Collins. I want to talk to you for 20 or so minutes today about the contours of this course via the syllabus. I'm trying to split the screen via QuickTime to make sure that that happens in a synchronous sort of way. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll just do it in semi-traditional way where I'm not just, where I babble in the class about this as opposed to you listen to me babble by video while I go, stop and start and add some stuff here and there. So either way. Some of you have been in my courses before, a lot of you have not. For those who have been in these courses before, you will find that there are a few new things that I've done this year that I didn't do in previous years. Live and learn, um, in terms of efforts and so on and so forth. I have, for one thing, the syllabus that I have in front of you today is for a course that, quite frankly, I've taught this section of U.S. history and African American history before Civil War Reconstruction, but not just as a standalone course. Um, and my area of expertise is primarily the 20th century, although I've definitely studied slavery, slave studies, Civil War Reconstruction. In fact, I had, unfortunately, for better or for worse, had an eighth grade history social studies teacher who also was finishing his PhD, focused on the Civil War Reconstruction in sort of lost cause Southern sympathies kinds of ways. Which meant that I got a heavy dose of the Civil War really wasn't about slavery, when the point of fact it really was about slavery. Me and this guy argued a lot. And I was just in eighth grade because this is the second thing I ever studied in life as a kid after, like outside of the classroom after World War II. This is the second thing I actually ever studied. And so I was kind of like, and read a lot about, so I was kind of like, really? Okay, whatever. So, but anyway, but the course itself, in terms of the contours of it, for one, you'll see that I have both the sections of this course listed on my syllabus. The 140 section and the 305 section. Why? Because the course is the same. There's nothing that changes whether I teach it at 140 in the afternoon or 305 except my level of energy. All right. So, so in terms of content matters, nothing changes. So if you decide every once in a while, hey, I don't want to, I'm going to skip going to the 140 today. I'm going to go to the 305 because I have something that I have to get a tooth pulled or whatever. Not that you'd come to class and getting a tooth pulled. That sounds kind of ridiculous. But let's say, for sake of argument, you did do that. You could come to that class. I wouldn't want you regularly doing that, but if you need to, we have two sections, so come to the other section. So, so that's one change. No duplication of having two documents, two copies of the same document that constantly mixed up. It's all in one document. So there's that. Office hours are listed, and as usual, and everything else. But the other thing I should point out, especially for those of you who've taken me before, is I've cut the syllabus size in half. My syllabi were getting to the point where they're approaching 16, 18, 20 pages in length because I wanted to make sure everything that was being taught in the course, every assignment that was going to be part of the course, every reading was going to be part of the course, every possible explanation of everything was going to be in the syllabus so you could read it. So that most people weren't reading it. To the point where people were getting angry with me about not mentioning that this stuff was in the syllabus, when in point of fact I'd mentioned this stuff was in the syllabus. So I'm kind of like, okay, I'm separating out stuff that I can explain later on in the semester, and giving you the contours of the syllabus that's pretty short. Course description, course introduction, course objectives, what you're going to be graded on, what your required reading or readings are. Don't plagiarize, which I'll spend a little bit of time on, and your course schedule, which includes all your readings, when your assignments are due, and so on. That's the syllabus in a nutshell. Right, but I'm going to go over a couple of things just to make sure that you understand, and that I understand what the syllabus is about. So I'm going to scroll a bit to show you these sorts of things, okay? So we'll start with the course description right here. The course is divided into three parts. This is what it says. First asks what forces led to the American Civil War. The second examines various aspects of life during the war years. And the final part considers how the nation reconstructed itself in the post-war years. Students should recognize that relatively little time is devoted to military history. This is the one reason why I've never wanted to teach this course, is because of the fact that I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time basically going through Civil War reenactments as part of trivia for all the military buffs that are out there. Not because I don't care about learning about flanking positions versus why you shouldn't charge in from repeating rifles and cannon and all that other stuff, right? That kind of thing, right? But mostly because of the fact that when you spend so much time on military taxes, you don't really spend time talking about why they were fighting, right? What they were fighting about, why this was so important, such a pivotal moment in American history that literally entire history courses are built around, U.S. history courses are built around the pendulum that is the Civil War and Reconstruction, right? so, so the fact that I only get to spend like maybe 2 classes talking about battles is great. That's great from my standpoint. Now, if you really want to learn more, there are an S ton of of documentaries out there that will go through battle after battle in detail. Who got killed, why they got killed, why Pickett's charge was terrible, all of that other stuff. Spend a little bit of time on it, but this course really is about what happened that led to it, what happened to people in terms of life as a result and during it, and what happened afterward, right? And particularly for African Americans, but also for white folks too. So, anyway, so this is my introduction to the course, not the course description. At the end of the Civil War in 1865 came perhaps the largest single social, political, and economic change in American history, not to mention cultural and socio-cultural and socio-psychological, and I could keep going, right? The signing of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution acknowledged the freedom of 4 million enslaved Africans, and the subsequent 14th and 15th Amendments conceded their humanity and American citizenship, beginning from chattel slavery to a point where Congress recognized, at least for a time, attempted to protect black folk and their humanity and civil rights required major changes in our nation, major contributions from all segments of our society, including the march to the Civil War. It required changes in how we as a nation understood liberty, justice, freedom, equality, and prosperity. This course will cover the development of the United States between the march toward the Civil War and Reconstruction / the rise of Jim Crow. In between, we will explore the relevance of this nation's development and the issues that we as a nation still struggle with today. One things that might be most prominent here, just to mention very quickly, because historians tend to be divorced from reality, is that the country in a lot of ways is on a trajectory that's not quite dissimilar, um, from from what led to the American Civil War. There could be another American Civil War. You know, we're already seeing sort of the signs of it: constant violence, terrorism towards folks of color, terrorism toward folks who are queer, terrorism toward folks who aren't white guys, right? Let me be very specific. Cis heteronormative white guys, many of whom are incels, right? Let's be very specific. Now, this is not about all white guys. I don't want to race war, but some of these folks do, right? So, part of what I hope to do in this course, in addition to just giving you the general history, is to give you some sense of, this is not new stuff. Nothing's new under the sun. And so the same issues of isms, racism, imperialism, misogyny, don't tell me what to do. I'll do what I want to do. Individualism that, is a proxy for narcissism. Those kinds of things existed 160 years ago, too, 165 years ago as well. So, we're going to spend a little bit of time hoping to end with that. But a lot of this is not going to be about this, just to give you some sense of how we roll toward all of this. So that's where we are in that, right? Course objectives and goals, right? Next. At the end of the course, the student will be able to recognize the immediate and proximate causes of the Civil War, right? Which means talking about Well, why did the Civil War happen, right? How and why? Understand the development of a unique culture as well as cultural and other forms of independent thinking, action, resistance among enslaved Africans both before and during the Civil War. Yeah, the Civil War is not just about white guys fighting on either side and white women, dressing wounds. There are black people involved in this too, right? Understand the development of unique culture as well as cultural and other forms of independent thinking, action, resistance among newly freed African Americans during Reconstruction. Again, do not just spend time on carpetbaggers and scalawags and traitors toward the South and all this other crap around the South's lost cause argument, which has always been a false argument in my, not just in my opinion, but based on all the evidence. Um, Pay particular attention to expanding notion freedom in the modern world as emancipation came to be in the U.S. during and after the Civil War. That's a universal sort of thing, that obviously impacted black folk, but certainly impacted the country as a whole to basically not have this class known as enslaved folk as part of your economy. Explain the ups and downs of the post-emancipation world in which African Americans formed a national identity, in which North and South united, the basis for Jim Crow. Yeah, racism helps unite people even as it divides people. So that's sort of a theme there. Acquire appreciation of evolution and historical analysis and methodologies, otherwise known as how to approach history, to begin to think like historians. In other words, not just what happened, not just the trivia around what happened, but why did it happen? How did it happen? Those are going to be key questions. And the key question here is questions. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about developing good questions to ask, not necessarily trying to answer all your questions. History is not trivia. History is not Jeopardy. So anyway, so those are the objectives. Your reading list literally is whatever's in the course schedule, whatever's posted in Moodle, and Eric Foner's book, The Second Founding: How the Civil War Reconstruction Remade the Constitution. This is the only book for this course, and you will mostly be using it in the second half of the course because it concentrates mostly on how the Civil War led to the construction of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution. That's what it's about. Now it provides background on why the Civil War, some background, but it's summary background that does not go into detail. The other readings I provide that are in the course schedule that as links that you can go directly to, or in Moodle as part of readings, you can look at the readings that are listed and go in there and go, oh, okay, I'll read this one in Moodle for week 2 kind of thing. So that's what we're talking about. Grading information. There are basically 3 criteria for this course. Now, last semester I tried something different for those of you who are in my classes in the spring of 2023. I tried to actually not deal with attendance and participation at all, with mixed results. While it definitely helps students who were sick, who were dealing with a variety of different issues, there are a lot of students who just took advantage or just stopped coming to class. There are students who sometimes didn't show up for upwards of 9 classes in a row and then wondered why they didn't do so well on their midterm assignment or their final project or their proposal. Some students complained that they only had 2 cracks in the apple, which just wasn't true. If you have an assignment that has a first draft due week 5 and a final draft due week 7, you had more than 1 crack. If you have a proposal due week 9 or 10 and then the final project due at the end of the semester, you had 2 cracks. You just refused to use them wisely, so it's not my fault that you didn't show up for class. But the bottom line is, in order to actively participate in discussion, to ask good questions, to be part of small group projects and everything, you need to show up. You need to be there, whether virtually or physically, be there in class. It's worth a quarter of your grade, right? So the highest grade you can possibly get in the class, if you just decide to back out of participation, is a C, a solid C, but a C. And that's assuming that you get 100 on everything. Why would you assume that you're going to get 100 on anything is beyond me? But, go ahead, if you really want to miss that much class and expect to get, and you're satisfied with a C or lower, and it will more than likely be much lower than a C, like a C minus or a D or something like that, then go right ahead. You're an adult, do what you want. But the bottom line is, if you're going to be an adult in terms of responsibility, not just privilege too. So I will excuse up to 7 absences over the course of a semester unless there are extenuating circumstances. That's the old rule that I have. So you miss a quarter of all of our meeting times all semester. If you're just missing one here and one there, just don't email me just because you're taking a day off, right? If you want to take a mental break, take a mental break. If you want to go to a concert, not show up, and say that's up to you. But what I'm saying is that if you have to miss more than one, let me know, right? If you're sick, let me know. If you're having issues, let me know, right? Those are the things to email me about. Don't clog up my emails because you just happen to decide that it's a nice day and I don't want to come to class today. Please don't do that. I mean, that's, it might be common courtesy, but it actually is kind of annoying to get little emails like this and expecting me to respond and go, okay, right? You already know you're going to get an excused absence. Just take the day if you want to take a mental break. But if you're going to miss more than one, or over the course of the semester more than 7, you should let me know. Okay, simple as that. Quarter of your grade. You have a small group writing assignment in which you do 2 drafts. First draft's worth 15%. The second draft is worth 20% for a total of 35% of your grade. You'll be doing this in groups of 3 or 4, and it's a questions draft. You are literally writing about questions or holes that haven't been answered through your readings and other means as far as the Civil War and or Reconstruction is concerned. That is your main task, right? Ask good questions, good history questions around these kinds of things, not just any old question, right? What if the South had won the Civil War? That's probably not a very good question. We'll discuss that much more as the course progresses. Just as an example, what if questions generally aren't really good historical questions. But holes in things like, you know, I can't really give you a direct example because that would be giving away too much, of course, but I'll just use World War II as an example. Why is the periodization of World War II only between 1939 and 1935, when in fact China and Japan have been fighting off and on since 1931 and consistently since 1937, when Italy invades Ethiopia or Abyssinia in 1935 and is fighting there for several years before World War II breaks out. Why do we count World War II as only September 1st, 1945 to September 2nd, 1939 and September 2nd, 1945, when the point fact fighting is going on in various parts of the world for years prior to that? That's a good historical question. Why do we periodize this thing as being X when it's not really X? Just as an example. So, small group assignment involves that processing of explaining why this is a good question and why this question would actually get into some of the things that we might not be discussing in this course, right? Or your readings don't discuss, or experts in the field don't discuss for whatever reason. So, that's just one example, right? We'll talk about this much more in week 3. But you have a first draft that's due week 5, October 8th. The final draft is due October 22nd. You'll be working in groups to produce, each of you producing a piece of the puzzle for 1 or 2 questions, depending on the size of the group. Okay. And then you have, and it should be listed as 3, not 2, freestyle artifact individual group assignment. Let me change it on here so that you can actually see it right there. Okay, it's worth 40% of your grade. You have a proposal; it's worth 15%, and then you have the final project itself is worth 25%, so a total of 40. For those of you who've been in this course, it's an artifacts assignment. You're looking at a historical artifact that either harkens back to the period between the Civil War and Reconstruction, or is from the Civil War Reconstruction period, to really dive deeper into to explain some aspect of what's happening in this time period, between roughly, I give you 1850 to 1885 so that you can talk about the causes of the Civil War, so you can talk about the consequences of the end of Reconstruction, that sort of thing. So I give you a little bit of that. But what I've changed that's different is there is no paper option here. Those of you who want to do individual projects do not get to write a paper. I've seen too many bad papers the last couple of years. Too many papers are just rushed, last minute kinds of things. I don't have time to do anything else. I'm just going to write a paper that's just basically just regurgitating a whole bunch of words, vomiting really a bunch of words, projectile vomiting really, and not really addressing these issues that you need to address in detail with analysis, right? And so I want folks to actually be able to spend some time thinking about an artifact, spend some time actually describing an artifact, its importance, how it sits and situates in the historical context of the period that we're talking about between the Civil War and Reconstruction, and then talk about why we should, its legacy. That's all. That's all you really need to do, right? But most of you get so caught up in the description that you forget about talking about its significance and you forget about talking about its legacy. But those things are important. And that's the second half of the semester, roughly weeks 9 through 14 or 15 of the semester. So, and you're again working in groups around that, or if you want to work individually, you can do that as well. But the bottom line is, you do it a visit. Your end product's going to be some sort of multimedia video presentation. Period. No one gets to present in person because it was with everything else. A lot of things did not go well in terms of projects last year, and that was the number one thing. Those people who decided to do presentations in person did, for lack of a better way of putting it, Mickey Mouse presentations. The kind of presentations that might have gone well if you were in fifth or sixth grade, or maybe even eighth or ninth grade, but not the kind of presentation you expect a college student to do. So maybe just being able to pull all that stuff together in sort of presentation format would be better than trying to do it in person. Either way, we'll talk about this a lot more as we get toward the middle of the semester. There's the grading scale. That's also in here. Submission of original work and academic honesty and plagiarism, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the main thing is the course schedule at the back end of things. There are a lot of works that have sites attached to them, like websites. So if it's a multimedia sort of thing, you have to read or watch it on the website, right? There's some readings that are easily accessible if you just click on them right here. You have a week where you basically have to read me, because I've written about causes and consequences of different things leading to the Civil War before. And so you click on that and it takes you right to the reading. There's some other things that are listed that that you're going to have to go to Moodle for, right? And so look it up on Moodle. But then there are also a lot of things I want you to watch in this course. This course is not going to be lecture. There's going to be there will be some lecture, but there will be an awful lot of showing parts of documentaries, showing book talks, listening to podcasts here or there, that kind of thing, so that it's not just me talking all the time. So there's that. And then finally, I want to finish up this section of what I'm doing today and talking specifically about your about plagiarism. Now, this is the same boilerplate I've had in all my syllabi before, so there's nothing new. But the one thing that is new that I just want to talk to you about is ChatGPT. ChatGPT. This AI stuff that students have fallen in love with, that have used in large numbers to basically cheat their way to a word salad paper, a paper that might have a lot of interesting sounding words and sentences and even paragraphs that might sort of mimic what an academic paper for an undergraduate should look like, but actually isn't, because there's no real analysis. There's no real, pulling together of stuff in a way that turns this word salad into something that's more cohesive and makes a lot of sense, that kind of thing. In other words, a standard C minus level paper that you normally get, which is why it's, you could probably fool folks. This is why I propose, if you plan on using ChatGPT for your stuff, cite it. Cite that you are using it as part of your thing. I'm going to make you if you're going to use it, I'm going to make you use it right. So cite it. Cite that you're using it, or that you've used it to work on your thing. I'm not going to penalize you for using it. You're not going to lose a grade for you for using it. I will evaluate it on the basis of what I normally evaluate your writings on. So if you were to do a questions paper using Chat GPT as a group, I'll grade it. The likelihood that you're probably going to get an A is going to be lower because then the level analysis probably won't be there. But go ahead. If you want to use it, as long as you cite it, you don't lose points. If you don't cite and I get a word salad, I'm going to assume that you probably use Chat GPT and you're going to get a lower grade. I would prefer if you just did good work or good, or pretty good work, and even decent work, and you worked hard at it, and you still got a C plus, but at least it's your work. I'd rather have a C plus assigned on something I actually did work on than a B or a B minus on something I didn't work on, and the professor was like, I don't know if I should trust this person sending anything to me in the future. But anyway, that's part of how I'm handling that issue this semester, at least. And that's where I will stop in terms of talking about the contours of the course.